Hi there. Do you ever feel like you're stuck in the same old stress loops? Like your body is reacting before you've even had a chance to think about it. For a long time, I felt like that, constantly anxious, triggered, and I never really knew why. But then I started to realize my nervous system had its own unique map and its own way of dealing with things. And the way it reacts, the signals it gives me, the patterns it falls into, that's my landscape. And when I began to chart it, everything changed. And that's what I want to share with you today. So, in this episode of Reflections of the Sacred Self, I'm going to share a bit about my journey to understanding and decoding my nervous system, and also give you the tools so that you can begin to do it for yourself. So, one thing I will say is it's not about diagnosing yourself or pathologizing what you feel, because sometimes we can get into that habit as well of over intellectualizing. But it's actually about understanding your own wiring and your own, like, your body's like hidden compass. Like your body is telling you so much, and it's about us starting to understand that and be able to map it so that we can make progress with it. So, personally, for me, it could be, for example, I have a very tense relationship with my mum, and I can pick up with my nervous system very quickly what mood she's in by even in a text by the words she's using. And that I can just tell what's going to happen and my body responds to that. So then I feel the anxiety coming in and that triggers lots of different things within me. And so that's a trigger. Like, so my now nervous system is triggered by the tone that somebody has written. And for a long time, I was triggered without understanding what it was that was triggering me. So she was saying something or sending me a text, and I was being triggered completely. My whole body would go into fight or flight, and I would then react as somebody from fight or flight, which would then compound the problem. So I might become snappy or irritable or combative. Other times I would freeze and I would go into a spacey, not focused sort of state, and it would stop me from being able to do anything until I kind of understood, okay, this is what is happening. This is why I'm feeling like this, and I can do something about it. And it's important to note, sorry, I've got hair on my lips, that these responses are ancient survival strategies. Okay, so there's nothing wrong with you for having these. They're designed to keep you safe. It's nature's way of protecting you. And the key is, because we've got the ability to reason, to understand, and to logic it through, we can learn our patterns and learn to navigate them with ease. So we can learn to regulate ourselves a lot more quickly as we understand what's going on. And so to do that yourself, to start to decode your personal stress signals, what you need to do is start going into self-inquiry. And I always teach so much about self-awareness, understanding. As we learn more and more about ourselves, it helps us to grow. So you can start to ask yourself, what are your tells? Is it a racing heart or a knot in the chest, sweaty palms, or just mental fog where everything feels too much? Or like for me, I'll give you a good example of things that happen with me. If I have to do something like give a presentation and I find it anxiety provoking, I will often, while I'm waiting to go, and when I get on stage, I can perform, but while I'm waiting and the anxiety is ramping up, I will find myself, my hands will shake and I will get cold sweat running down my back and I will be freezing. I'm shivering. I'm so cold, but I'm sweating. That is like, I know when I get to that point, I'm really nervous about performance anxiety. And I only ever get it in those situations where, it's a long time since I had it actually, but I only ever got it where I would be going into situations where I was going to be performing, talking in front of people. I don't really get it anymore. It was when I was younger. And that's how my body would respond because the fear was so great. And it's starting to understand, okay, well, this is what's happening in my body. So now I need to regulate a bit to bring myself down. And so like other examples where I would get that is, I hate injections. Like, well, I hate them, right? I find them really terrifying. Now, this is somebody who had IVF and had to inject themselves. I don't even know how many times, which I never got used to it, hated it all the way through, couldn't handle it, but I did it. But even if I go and have a blood test now, I get really anxious. So I've trained myself. This is nervous system work because I know that I'm going to get these anxiety feelings and I know what's happening in my body. So when I go, and the last time I had a blood test, and I was like, oh, you cope with that remarkably well. And really, I didn't enjoy it at all. But I've developed a strategy of sitting with my eyes closed. I deep breathe and I imagine myself in a really calm, relaxing place. And I just take myself off somewhere else. They do the blood test. I come back and it's done. And I actually, my stress response is much, much lower than it used to be because I'm regulating my nervous system. I'm aware that it's my nervous system that is responding and that I can actually, because the transport system is mostly from the body to the brain. So even if my brain is nervous about a blood test and my brain is creating those stories around it, I can calm my body and I can put my body in a relaxed, calm state. And that can send a message to the brain that actually you're okay, you're safe. And so it's knowing that you have that control of the communication by what you tell your body, the messages that you allow your body to send to your brain. So as you relax your body then sends these messages up to the brain that you're safe. And so it's all about how you can control into some ways or master that communication, I would say, more than master. So you're understanding, okay, when I'm in fight or flight, this is how my body responds quite often. These are the signals. When I notice fight or flight kicking in, this is what happens. When I notice myself going into freeze state, so the dorsal vagal shutdown, like what happens? What do I sense? What happens? And knowing that, okay, right, what can I go to my body to? What somatic practices can I use that are going to put me back in my body, that are going to bring me out of that state and back into a more regulated ventral vagal state? And that's when we start to map out our nervous system. And not only that, we map out how to master our nervous system, the things that work for us, because we're all different and we all respond to different practices and we respond to different practices at different times. So we start to build up our Bible of practices, if you want. It's our own personal things that we can use. Like for me, deep breathing works whenever I'm going to fight or flight and I feel that raising, deep breathing. So I've explained this, I don't know if I explained this in the video before, I explained to someone else that when we go into fight or flight, and this is completely the way that I view it. When we're in fight or flight, I see it as a rising. Okay, so I see that the fight or flight is a rising feeling. So when I regulate myself, I regulate things that bring me down. So I breathe deeply, I ground, I come down. Now, if I go into the freeze state, which is a collapse when I feel overwhelmed, so I see that as a going down state. So we're going down into the freeze. And actually that is actually the bit that's controlled below the heart, the ventral of the vagus nerves, the oldest part that comes from reptiles, that's a going down into that. And so I look for practices that will bring me up and out. So that might be shaking, really like a vigorous exercise, or doing something where I connect up into my body. So up, what's going to lift me up. So that might be doing a positive, like a gratitude work or a heart work, something that brings me up out of the lower regions of my body, up into my higher. Now, that's my own personal perspective. It's the way I see it. I see us as having a channel running all the way through. I think of it as that. And so one is up and one is down, and I bring myself back to center always. That's my own visual way of experiencing my own stress responses. And your experience may be very different. But hopefully that helps if you feel those sensations. So thinking about when you're regulating what it is that you need. And so, yeah, there are lots of different ways in which you can do that. And so now, this is where we can get it practical. So start when you notice, when do you get triggered? So we've done the self-inquiries. We're starting to understand what our triggers are, when we get triggered, what happens in our bodies, and what helps to bring us back. So you can have like a journaling structure, which is like trigger, physical response, emotion, and what helped. Because the emotions and the thoughts often come from our physical response. So we have an external stimuli that go on. And the way Dr. Stephen Porges describes it is he creates this thing called neuroception. So in neuroception, what happens is a totally unconscious response to the body to external stimulus. Okay, so that we have that external stimulus. So then we become aware of what's happening in our bodies. And that then sends all these signals up into our brain. And our brain is now aware, okay, well, I'm feeling all of these things. So the brain just says, okay, well, the reason I'm feeling all of these things is. and your brain works out a story around those feelings. So once we've got that story around those feelings, this is why I feel like this. So I feel anxious because this is happening, and now I feel like this. So then we say, okay, well, what's going to bring us back down out of that? And this is when it's different to regular, say, therapy, where we now think, okay, well, I'm going to think my way out of this. So I'm suffering from anxiety like all the time. I'm always on edge. So now I'm going to try and think my way out of it. Except you're only sending a very small number of signals from the brain down to the body. So if the body's still responding to the external stimulus and it's still on high alert, it doesn't matter what the brain's doing because the body is not going to listen. So what we work on is, okay, right, so now I know I'm having all these feelings. What practice can I put into my body that's going to calm my body, that's then going to send that message back up to my brain that I'm safe? And that's kind of where the work comes in. And so for me, it might be, I've had a run-in with my mum and I feel tight in my chest. That can trigger panic attacks and racing thoughts, and I can go over that. And then I can actually then shift into freeze mode because it's so overwhelming, all the feelings I'm having, and I don't know what to do. And my brain just goes into overwhelm. So I can do a grounding breath and I can journal, which helps me return to me. And you can always sketch it out as well. So what does calm feel like in your body? What are your early warning signs? And it's like you can actually draw it out. You can have a journal, you can draw a picture, like what comes to mind. Journaling doesn't just have to be writing words. You can create a picture of the feelings, the colours, put the colours in, what happens and what brings you back. So this is one of the things I like to work on a lot with my clients and with myself, is because your nervous system is a map. It is your personal survival guide. Right? No one's will look exactly the same as yours. We all have our own personal nervous system map. And as we start to journal and understand and create that map, we end up with a really deep understanding of ourselves. So when you start to understand that map, you stop seeing yourself as broken, which is something that we often think. And we think that we're having these responses because something wrong with us, when actually it's a natural, human, biological response that we're pre-programmed to have. And when you stop seeing yourself as broken and trying to fix yourself, you start to see the patterns, the things that cause this stuff to happen, what's triggering you, what's happening. And it's the patterns and the response to the patterns that you can work on and you can learn to work with. And I've found I can now catch things earlier, and I can say, oh, I'm in fight mode right now, which I would say when I get stressed, my first trigger, the first mode I go into is fight. It's just a natural response. I'll give you a perfect example. How long ago was this now? I don't know, 10, 11 years ago. I was teaching yoga in London. Fortunately, I had my yoga mat on my back. I was crossing the road, pouring with rain. Green man came on. Now, if you live in the UK, green man says go, you can walk across the road. A bicycle ran a red light. I had a hood up, I didn't see. Came flying around the corner, smashed into me, threw me down to the floor. My yoga mat on my back actually broke my fall, but my head still smacked onto the pavement. I think I was knocked unconscious for 10 seconds. We're talking like it was a big impact. And I got up and I punched the guy on the bike because that was my natural response, because I was so terrified, I nearly died, and my response was to just come out fighting. Because and to be fair, before I did that, he actually sat on his bike, leaned over his bike, didn't ask me how I was, shouted at me for being in the road, even though there was a green man. But anyway, that's by the by. So my response was to go up and punch him. That's a natural trigger response. Okay, so just being aware that sometimes these responses, when you really go into fight or flight, you will respond just instinctively. There is no thought process. I didn't think, oh, I'm going to get up and punch this guy. I just literally, and I can always remember it. It just happened yesterday. I was lying on my side on the ground, kind of half supported by my yoga mat. And I did some kind of weird bounce off the ground onto my feet and lumped in one. And there was no, I don't even know how I got up because my leg, I was so bruised and battered and had concussion and everything. So, just know that once you start to understand, okay, these are my responses. I don't think I would have got that one in time, but you start to understand, okay, when I get under real stress, this is how I respond. then you can kind of preempt it. You can be working on it. You notice it happening before it goes all the way up, and then you can bring it down before you actually get, or where if you're going down, you can bring it up before you go to the extremes where it needs to be. Okay, so I've talked quite a lot for this one to you today. And this isn't a one-time project. So your nervous system is alive. It's always changing. And the way in which you respond, like I said, I used to have the sweat down my back, which I don't really get anymore. And so your map grows with you. So you're always constantly working on it. But the more you chart it, the more freedom you'll find in your own skin, because the more you start to learn about yourself. So my question to you is, what's one stress signal your body gives you that you'd like to start mapping? So it could be your breath, your chest, your stomach, your shoulders. It could be sweaty palms. It could be anything. So share it below. And if you want practices to help, then I will drop a link below to my free group on School, and you can come in, and there's some free practices in there, and also a really supportive community to help you along the way. And if you like this video, remember to like and subscribe. Otherwise you won't get any more.